All right, the clash is over. Chase Elliott is the winner. Ricky Stenhouse goes after a NASCAR admin, and we're going to help Landon Huffman, hopefully, find a fan in the stands. So let's get into it. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, the clash at Bowman Gray is over. Chase Elliott was your winner. Ryan Blaney finishes second. But before we even get to that, the question comes up, should the clash remain at Bowman Gray? And on one side of the argument, you have a lot of people saying it was fun, it was great that it was at Bowman Gray, but we need to move it around to grow the sport. So their argument is it needs to be held different places pretty much every single year for every single exhibition event, because that will grow the sport, because you take it into different markets, you go into different regions. I think Adam Stern mentioned that they're going to take it to Brazil one year, or they're at least talking about taking it to Brazil one year. So all kinds of rumors and stuff like that are out there, but a lot of people want to take it to different venues because they think marching it around like a circus or a parade is going to draw interest, draw viewership, and draw more fandom, which is a fair point. You take it to different markets, you let different people experience it live and in person, and live and in person, I tell people all the time, is definitely the best way to watch NASCAR racing. So they do have a point there. However, for all the people that are like, it's another race in North Carolina, it's another race at an old track that they've raced at before and left, for all those people that say things like that, if you look at the most recent moment in NASCAR history that brought more people to the sport, enthused, energized the sport, brought more people, more eyes, more viewership to the sport itself, it happened at one of the oldest tracks in the series, it happened in the Southeast, and it had nothing to do with where the venue was at. It had to do with how the racing was on the track, and that was when Ross Chastain at Martinsville did the wall ride. And I know for a fact it created at least one new fan. Shout out to Jacinto Quattro. There, I think you're in Palm Springs. Always in the chat. Super good dude. But he became a NASCAR fan, using his story specifically, because of the Ross Chastain wall ride. So what I would say is, if we focus more on what tracks are important and what tracks can put on a good race, that is far more important than where we have the actual races themselves. And if you want to like really get technical about it, if you look at the golden age of NASCAR, they had 4 or 5 races in North Carolina. So it doesn't really matter where the races are held, although I do think moving them around is a good idea. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where the races are held. We need to focus on the quality of the product on track. And this, to me, is where Bowman Gray shined the most. This was an exciting race from start to finish. The fact that it was an exhibition race let the guys race the way that they want to race. They weren't worried about points or anything like that. And that made for a really, really great race. So the venue itself, in this particular situation, makes it what it is. I think you could build a lot of buzz behind this particular race going forward just because of how well it was run, how hard the racing was, and things like that. And it doesn't really matter that it's another race in North Carolina. Whereas, I will admit, you do need to move stuff around, but we don't need to leave Bowman Gray just yet. There's tons of tracks out there with 2 dates that can't sell out either date, so if you cut them down to one race, you would have more room to move the schedule around, and you could take these other races to other parts of the country, so you can still have the best of both worlds while keeping Bowman Gray somewhere in the NASCAR lineup, at least off and on here and there, because I think what we saw last night is what we've wanted to see desperately at short tracks, particularly with this car, since we've gotten this new car. And last night we actually got a good short track race for the first time in quite some time with this new car. All right, now on to the race results, the good and the bad. Chase Elliott, of course, winning. Ryan Blaney taking that provisional and going from the back of the pack all the way to second. He said he didn't want to rough up Chase Elliott to get the win. He said he didn't feel like he could pass him clean, and he didn't want to have the fans chase him out of the stadium. So unclear whether or not Ryan Blaney was scared of the fans' reaction or he has a moral code where he doesn't want to move somebody out of the way for the win. But either way, he decided that even though he had the better roll speed and Chase Elliott had the better drive off, he wasn't going to use the bumper to move him out of the way to get the win that way. So that's the way Ryan Blaney decided to race, and I think you can respect that if that's what he made the decision to do. Then on to third place, Denny Hamlin. He won the first half of the race, or was halfway was leading. I don't know if that counts as a win. I don't know if that was a stage or not. Anyway, Joey Logano finishing in fourth place, so a second and a fourth for Penske. Bubba Wallace coming in fifth place in that purple and white number 23 for 2311. Ross Chastain in sixth place. Trackhouse cars were fast, but never could quite get to the front on this one. Austin Cindric, another Penske car in the top 10 in seventh place. Tyler Reddick, didn't really hear much from him, but that paint scheme was really amazing. He was just up there all night, but never really contending for the win for whatever reason, but had a decent run for sure. Shane Van Gisbergen, pretty impressive. Good performance there at a short track. Chris Buescher rounding out your top 10 RFK man. Then 11 through 23 guys that had a disappointing day. Ryan Preece had a lot of speed, unfortunately touched the wall a few times in the main event and wasn't able to do what he wanted to do, but definitely had a fast car. Christopher Bell also had a good car, couldn't get up there. Josh Berry, really fast car. Unfortunately, situations dictated that he ends up in 13th, but I think he had a good performance if you count the last chance qualifier, and the actual show itself moved his way up through the field nicely. Todd Gilliland, Kyle Busch, Carson Hocevar, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Alex Bowman, Noah Gragson, Brad Keselowski, Daniel Suarez, and Chase Briscoe all had some type of issue as to why they didn't finish any higher than they did. And those issues, of course, on a track like Bowman Gray are going to happen, so it is what it is. All right, now let's take a look at who Milton had as the best race and worst race. And his best race is going to be a 9.5 by Chase Elliott. He controlled the first half before being passed by Denny Hamlin. Elliott took advantage of the restarts and regained the lead. He masterfully held off Ryan Blaney to take his first Clash win. Verdict, execution, near perfection. And I 100% agree with that. It basically was a perfect race for Chase Elliott. His worst race, however, goes to Noah Gragson. Give him only a 3.0, started 9th, finished 20th. Gragson quickly dropped back through the field, becoming the first car to get lapped. Despite benefiting from several incidents, this lackluster pace kept him at the back. Verdict, a good weekend turned bad. So there you go. A lot of guys had good weekends turn bad. That's just the nature of this. It's going to be the nature of Daytona when we go there in a couple weeks as well. However, not even in the main event, but one of the guys that apparently had a bad week was Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who is responding to a NASCAR regional admin here when he says whoever is running the regional account is clearly someone just getting into racing in response to an orange car wrecked Burt Myers at Bowman Gray. So there you go. Ricky Stenhouse continues his jihad against anybody that lives in Welcome or near Welcome, North Carolina. Cost Austin Dillon a chance in the playoffs by wrecking inexplicably as he had a massive lead at Richmond. He has now wrecked Burt Myers and doesn't think it's his fault. Whether it is his fault or not, his body of work is going to deem him guilty on this. And of course, there was the Kyle Busch incident from last year. So if you're from the Winston-Salem, Welcome, North Carolina area, stay away from Ricky Stenhouse because apparently he has beef. I'm joking. Ricky Stenhouse is a great driver, but it is ironic that all of these drivers live in sort of the same area that he's had controversy with, and now he's beefing with a NASCAR admin. The only thing newsworthy that happened during the main event night, we saw this quote here from Toyota Gazoo Racing that I found on J-Ski. What did you think when you saw your hauler, and do you have any concern? I mean, it is tough out there. Sponsorship is hard to come by, and certainly while it is such an important time in our sport to recognize that sponsorship dollars are not flowing like they used to for sure, everyone has to adjust quite a bit, and there are certain aspects that Joe Gibbs Racing has to price into their pricing as well that it is probably tough. I don't know. It is part of it. Certainly having one sponsor for 20 years made things pretty easy, and now it's all catching up. Is it concerning from my end? Maybe a little bit, but it is probably more concerning from JGR's standpoint. So a lot to sort of digest or unpack there. First off, he said the sponsor dollars aren't flowing. We've all known that for a long time. Obviously, they're not flowing like they were in the mid-2000s. And because of that, a lot of these bigger teams have had to retool. He's basically mentioning that Joe Gibbs Racing has been so used to having these sponsors. It's sort of the last one in the old guard that was able to hold the line under the old model. They had all these sponsors that had bought into them, and they were able to still do it the old way for a lot longer time than other companies have been able to. But now recently, with the loss of M&M's and now FedEx that were absolutely two staples of Joe Gibbs Racing, they're now having to readjust and reorganize how they do business. And that, I think, is what Denny Hamlin means when he says it is concerning to him, but it is probably more concerning to Joe Gibbs Racing because Denny Hamlin probably feels like he can just go out there as a race car driver and race. It definitely has to concern him from the owner's side of the seat as well, though, because as Joe Gibbs Racing goes, so does 2311, because they are so tightly aligned with everything that they do. So I'm sure it concerns him from the owner's seat as well, but he seems to think that it's probably a lot more stressful right now for Joe Gibbs Racing than it is for him personally, even though he is a co-owner of 2311. All right, and one more tidbit before we jump off here. Landon Huffman is looking for this guy right here in the stands, so if you can find him, he said, y'all help me find this guy on social so I can send him a bunch of free merch, please. So Landon Huffman being a good dude trying to find him, so if you know who it is, let Landon Huffman know on social media. He's pretty active on X, so let him know over there if you know who that is so he can find him and hopefully get him that merch, because we're all here for free merch, are we not? All right, that's all I got for you in this one. If you made it this far, I would love to have your subscription. If not, I'll just keep making these things. If you're already subscribed, you know I appreciate you all as well. All right, until the next one. Peace.